Is Ukraine developing demining technologies that look like they belong in science fiction? We're going to take a look at the cutting edge of Ukrainian demining technology. And it looks like it's already starting to be tested. We're going to talk about how it can impact the future of warfare. Let's get right into it. So this is actually coming to us from one of the charitable organization that's actually created it, a demining organization called Demining of Ukraine. And I might actually throw a link for them in the description if I can. But what they seem to be doing is trying to find ways they can effectively conduct demining operations, well, in Ukraine, and because it's a huge crisis, right? And I'll show you what I mean. So we know that the Russian army has deployed an eye-watering amount of mines. They believe something in the millions along this Zaporizhzhia front in particular. And they've done this in order to create a massive obstacle, like a basically province or an oblast-wide obstacle that Ukrainian forces will have to work to penetrate. And as we've seen, the process of penetrating these minefields is so tedious that it allows Russian forces to reposition their combat power in such a way that's always going to meet the Ukrainians, right? Ukrainians will clear a small path through a minefield, but the Russians will sit there and say, well, we know you've cleared 3 paths through this minefield. We are going to position our artillery, our forces to meet you at each of those paths. It makes it really hard to kick anyone out of anywhere. And it's been a very effective defense strategy. And it echoes the fact that even in Iraq and Afghanistan, right, the signature weapon, the IED or improvised explosive device, was no more complex than a mine. That's all it was. It was a do-it-yourself mine with all kinds of different detonators, pressure plates, infrared, trigger wires, command wires, all sorts of different trigger mechanisms, but ultimately tactically not any different from the mines deployed by Russian forces. And so the United States, we never really solved the problem. We never found a way to defeat IEDs. We tried to use drone observation, but it wasn't scalable. We tried to find ways to detect them or to defeat them using electronic warfare, but ultimately the best thing we could do is just build vehicles that were less likely that were not going to kill the crew if they hit an IED. That was the best solution, but it wasn't really a solution because if your goal was to get soldiers out of the fight, an IED still did that, right? It didn't result in KIA and even necessarily a WIA. But what it did do was still take out a vehicle, right? To destroy a vehicle and for at least a little while, render its crew unable to fight. So there was never really a defeat to IEDs, but it seems like the pressure that Ukraine is under to try to clear these mines is immense. Because remember, all of these liberated territories, they also had mines deployed within them. As Russia tried to cover its retreat in Kharkiv, it threw tons of mines all over. And so the thing to take away from this is that there's a lot of demining operations that have to take place, both on the battlefield, but also after this war ends. And you can see here, right, that this charity has developed a way to deploy a pretty simple mechanism, right? This is a powerful agricultural drone, and here is a mine detector, or a metal detector, that can reach about 0.5 meter underground and scan for metal objects, scan for mines. Now you can see that it's a relatively, it's still a small system still a very small system relative to the size of the field. But remember, if your goal was to clear a path for, say, a tank, this could be the first step to marking where these mines are. Okay, the outfits are pretty funny, right? You can see these guys all have plate carriers on. I think to me that's implied that these guys are... well, they probably have the plate carriers, honestly, because there's a possibility that they're going to hit mines here. And if they do accidentally, say the drone runs out of batteries, falls, hits a mine, the mine explodes, you want to have some kind of protection.
Ну да.
Тобто будь-який залізовмісний об'єкт, він його буде бачити. Певна перевага є там використання магнітометрів над, наприклад, катушками металошукачів. Це те, що він може виявляти аномалії на глибині.
Right. So it's using a sensor, a magnetomer, which, as he points out, coiled metal detectors really need to be very, very close to detect the metal. But a magnetomer is going to be able to see way metal objects at distance and at depth. Which that's kind of the key, right? You don't the secret sauce is to be able to find the mine before you're having a close encounter with it. And even a soldier with a metal detector is only going to encounter that mine within a few feet, 2 or 3 feet of the mine itself. This was a problem with IEDs because sometimes a mine detector would actually detect the mine and would go, man, there's an IED 2 feet in front of me. But if it was a command wire IED, or it had a trigger mechanism that was in front of the mine, right? So you would set off the trigger, and then you would like click the trigger on before you would detect it, right? It would be in front of the IED. Or if a human being was watching, they would see the IED get detected and they would detonate it. So this standoff distance is going to make it a lot easier, especially if you have the standoff distance with a drone. You can see this is a minimum viable product here. I mean, a lot of these sensors look like they are just taped on, held together with tape. But this looks like a proof of concept. And the concept would basically be, can this detect mines using a magnetomer with enough precision that it's worthwhile? And can it communicate that reliably back to a drone operator, right? Can you get to the meter where the mine is? Because that's the other problem. You can't guess. You can't get a ballpark. It's got to be able to tell you to the square meter at least where the mine has been found.
Це практичне тестування в реальних умовах. Це перший досвід роботи в повному комплексі разом з саперами, тобто комплекс і алгоритм виявлення. Тобто до того ми працювали декілька.
Right, sappers he's talking about. This is clearly a military project, even though it's ostensibly a civilian demining effort. The fact that he's working with sappers, or combat engineers, as we sometimes call them, sappers often are the ones who are responsible for actually removing the mine and detonating it in place. And there is what he's describing as a complex detection algorithm. Probably it's a computer that interprets the signals that it gets from the soil and makes its best guess of, is it a mine in there? Because, for example, you may have let's say, for example, the farmer dropped his watch 2 years ago and never recovered it. It'll be detected, but something will have to interpret and say, hey, it's a small object. It's too small to be a mine, versus a big object where they say, oh, it's could be an anti-tank mine. And it's also, the algorithm has to, again, plot it very closely. So I think they're trying here. They've got some experienced explosive ordnance disposal guys or engineers who are going to be working with them to see if this data actually works.
Того ми працювали декілька разів на реальних об'єктах, але не працювали з саперами.
So what I suspect they're going to do is they've got a field here that needs to be demined. It looks like it's probably in the south. It says it's farms, but this looks like probably some, maybe even recently liberated territory. The drone is probably flying in a grid pattern. It probably knows exactly where it is via GPS, and it's probably, my guess is how they're going to test it, They're going to say, all right, the drone is going to plot where it thinks there are mines. Then the sappers are going to actually go through an inch by inch metal detector, old school, confirm, and we're going to vet if the drone is accurate. That's the process I think they're going to go for. And they're going to see if the drone has found all the mines, if it's found... so the drone, there's three basically things that can happen. The drone could find every mine and no false positives. That's the best outcome. Second, the drone could find some of the mines, but not all. And that would be a huge problem because then you haven't actually demined. Because you still have to check every inch of the place manually because you don't know if you've got it all. The third outcome is that the drone finds every mine and some false positives. So it finds every mine, but it also hits on a nail that fell, the farmer's watch, all of it. So, or even worse, it has a bunch of false positives and it doesn't get all the mines. So there's a whole bunch of vetting that, again, if you can pair this with a machine learning algorithm, and this is what I've said, you need a machine learning algorithm that over time is going to be able to take data. Probably realistically, to get it really accurate, you're going to need data from probably a magnetometer and a camera. You're going to actually have a camera pointed at the ground doing a visual inspection, right? Because a good algorithm will sit there and say, is there dirt that's been recently turned up? Is there a mine that you can physically see, right? Can you see parts or all of a mine? And if you can get the algorithm to say, okay, both of these things are plausible, versus if it looks down and it goes, hey, the camera sees a watch, it sees a nail. It goes, okay, the magnetometer says a metal object, we observe a nail, not a mine. That's probably how you would have to get the reliability. Again, if you're talking about 2 million mines, you'd probably need it to be like 99.9% reliable. That means that if you detect 100 mines, one you'll miss. Because if you can get a whole field of 100 mines, you can get it down to one, that you can clear with a tank. You can just run one tank through it. Even if all you get is anti-tank mines, that can still be good. Because if you can clear you can't clear the anti-tank mines without clearing anti-personnel mines. So actually, it's not that good. Okay, so there's a mine.
Виявлено нами ТМ-62, теж підривник МВЧ. Як бачите, в траві. Її видно не буде.
See, again, this is something that you and I might not notice, but a camera with an algorithm that's been trained to look, it would confirm the mine here.
І вона достатньо глибоко закопана.
With a really good training set. Ukrainian sappers, dude. Fucking mind-blowing stuff. Found it. So what we're seeing here, we talked about this. What I think this actually is, I think this rocket this rocket is, my theory, is that it's part of the deployable scatterable mine technology that we've seen used elsewhere in the conflict. We talked about this at the Battle of Volodar. So what happens is, let's say, for example, your enemy, this is actually what the Ukrainians did at Volodar. Russian tanks would roll out from their bases and charge toward the town. And what would happen is the Ukrainians would sometimes meet them with artillery or mines or pre-positioned anti-tank crews, and they would hit that patrol. They would hit that attack, right? And then the tanks would start to retreat. And what had happened, unbeknownst to them, Ukrainian artillery had shot artillery rounds with scatterable mines and deployed them behind on the route those tanks were going to take to retreat. So as those tanks retreated, unbeknownst to them, this rocket or these artillery rounds had been shot overhead, opened up, and scattered mines all across the area where they were going to be passing. So then the retreating Russians would get hit again with mines, even though 4 hours prior, there had been no mines along that road. It's a really devastating tactic, and the Russians definitely took notes because supposedly they have done the same thing, where Ukrainian forces will clear a field of mines, and then suddenly the Russians will deploy these scatterable mines and remine the fields. And NATO mines are inferior because they are set to timers, because we've all signed a treaty that says mines are bad and we can't have persistent, long-lasting mines. Russia doesn't care. So when Russia scatters mines, they stay there indefinitely. When the US or UK provided weapons scatter mines, they have like a 12-hour shelf life before they self-detonate. So that looked like them setting off anti-personnel mines, right? You can see here, it looks like they're dragging this field with a reinforced mine roller that looks like it's setting off anti-personnel mines. Those looked like those little pops. They might have been nothing. They could have even been like pieces of grass or whatever, or like a something breaking, or possibly. But I suspect those were anti-personnel mines. And because this is big, heavy reinforced metal, and anti-personnel mines are meant to do things like, blow off a foot. They look pretty weak until you're standing on one. Right? And he says we want to bring all knowledge together and create a single demining algorithm. We go into the field and examine, organize whatever is needed.
Робити єдиний алгоритм розмінування. Тобто ми зайшли, побачили поле, все пролетали, проаналізували, зробили технічне, нетехнічне обстеження, все максимально все вже знайшли, винесли, і після нас повинні вже аграрії землю засівати. Так ми зробили в Миколаївській області. Поле було 2 рази продисковане і зараз буде підготовлюватися під озиму.
Right. So what this is using technology to do research. And the idea is that you use all these technologies, and he's using the word algorithm because that makes things sound, that's the tech word that we use now. But he's just describing a process. That's all it means. It means a systematic process where you combine the drones, you combine these automatic deminers, you combine sappers, human beings, and you find a way to very efficiently clear vast areas of mines. Remember, if you can clear something like this in a day, right? If you can do this level of clearance in a day, then imagine you only need, remember, for a tank to move tanks, you need about 12 feet wide. So how long and how fast could this system clear a 12-foot wide path that would allow a tank to pass through? And can it do so reliably? So that's like a mine roller right there. And then there's a farmer sowing his field.
Снаряд з гаубиці.
Yep, those are some of the unexpended warheads, and then those are some of the mines that have been scattered around. Looks like an anti-personnel mine.
Фактично вони нагріваються, є можливість тепловізором побачити взривачі.
От ТМ-ка, ти можеш трошки вперед попробувати, да. Дроном не ризикую, але трошки наведи.
There you go. There's the algorithm. Hopefully it tagged this mine here. It tagged as a possible location. So it looks like that's what they're doing. It looks like they're two-phasing it. Looks like they have a magnetomer phase, and then they have confirmation with a drone. And then it looks like they're sending in the metal detectors. Again, I think they're trying to see at this point, is the metal detectors duplicative? That's the goal, I think, to get it to the point where the machines mark every single mine location along the path, and then human beings clear and remove them using a blend of technologies. Because as we saw, if that mine roller hit an anti-tank mine, it would blow up, right? It would be completely destroyed. So you have to blend your technologies in a way that allows you to counter these. It's not easy, guys. It's a massive engineering problem. It is literally, if they can solve it, it is $1 billion salute problem. or $1 billion. The value of the solution is in the billions of dollars. And if for no other reason, even if the war ended today, you would still have billions of dollars worth of farm fields that should be producing wheat that cannot, because we are years or decades away from clearing all those mines. Anyway, guys, that's all I had for you. Be sure to check us out. First off at strikegum.com. This is my gum. It's an energy drink alternative. It has 90 milligrams of caffeine in every piece, plus 100 milligrams of alpha GPC. You can get yours at strikegum.com. It's a sugar-free 5-calorie energy drink alternative, which, energy drinks, $4 a pop. Best of all, 50% of the profits from this first production run are going to support charities that benefit Ukrainian civilians. Anyway, guys, that's all I had. See you in the next one. Cheers.